Welcome to the podcast where one host will definitely never be able to pronounce the Battle of Klaktakelpracht here on V'ger Please. A vile visit to Bajor. My name is Joseph.
Hey, remember me? You and I were in that college murder club back in school. Your co-host, Peter.
I dare you to try to pronounce the Klingon battle, by the way. I dare you right now.
Cock-to-coo, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Who cares? Fucking Klingons.
I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
What Klaktakelpracht, by the way, came up in the episodes that we watched with the augments, because it's the Klingon name for the Briar Patch, if you remember. It's all the continuity is all over the place. But what episode of Star Trek did we watch that has all this continuity?
Season 2, Episode 19, Blood Oath. First aired March 27th, 1994, written by Peter Allen Fields, directed by Rick Colby, in Universe Date 2370.
I said in our last week's episode, and this is a big favorite of mine. It remains that way. I think it's great just as an individual episode. I think it's inspired in their choice to bring back the 3 Klingon captains from TOS and have them in the episode and have them really carry the whole thing. I also think it's one of the more fascinating sort of divergence points when you start to think about Deep Space Nine as something that's going to be very different than TNG. As TNG is ending, Deep Space Nine's got to start to find its own path. And this episode compares, in my mind, a lot with Reunion from TNG from season 4, which is famously when Worf decides to go kill Duras after Duras kills his baby mama. And there's some similar beats between the two, and it's a lot of Deep Space Nine saying this is going to take a darker turn when it comes to our interpretation of 24th century morality, and we're going to go in a more realist direction, which I think there's a lot of merit to that, and the show ends up prospering because of it. So before I go too long, Peter, tell me what you thought of it.
It was okay. I didn't know that the 3 featured Klingons were, former guest stars reprising old roles, and I can see the novelty in that. It was a jarring experience to watch because these Klingons were very different than all of the other Klingons that we have gotten since through Next Generation forward. They came off feeling very hammy for the most part, the exception being, I think, Kor?
Yeah, Kor.
Kang.
Koloth is definitely hammy, and Kang definitely, like, he has a certain power in his presence. I like Kor a lot because he's someone in the Memory Alpha called him like the Falstaff of the group, which I think works very well.
Yes, absolutely. Hammy, silly. He felt like absolutely, the guy from Sliders. That's very much the vibe I got, and I wouldn't have been surprised if that was him. There's a bigger Klingon conversation I want to have here, and I only took 8 lines of notes because there's not a lot to criticize, and I also wasn't really falling over myself with praise on this one. It was a strong Jadzia Dax episode.
Oh, definitely.
Again, showing like what is the obligation of the host to the Trill symbiont. And it's funny because a lot of this runs counter in some ways to the episodes that were Trill-centric before, and a lot of it plays the same. Like the shitty one where she's trying to defend her old girlfriend that was her old buddy's wife, right?
Right.
A great entry into the you're going to die for Curzon's actions. Right?
Correct. Yeah. And there was a whole point made of how Jadzia and Curzon are separate people, and Jadzia can't be subject to a punishment that is meant for Curzon. And in this case, we're playing in the reverse, albeit I think in a way that makes more sense, which is Jadzia feels an obligation to follow through on what Curzon promised because she remembers it, because she has all of the memories that Curzon had. And to her, it is as if it was her own experiences. to the degree that she can still separate it. She can still say like this is something Curzon did, and also say like I owe it to Curzon to go do this. I'm the next person in line with the Dax symbiote. Like it would be a dishonor to his memory if I didn't follow through on something that he believed was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. The line that gets dropped there is each new host has no obligation, or has none of the obligations of the last. Which, okay, so if your host dies and still has a car payment, you're off the hook, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Do you get all their old possessions?
I don't think so. I think that you would treat it as that person died, and
So you can't like max out your credit cards before you kick the bucket and like hook the next one up with like
you can't inherit either. It's literally someone is dead. You're your own person. You're just carrying with you all of these experiences.
Can you go in your new host body to your old guy's like estate sale? Like, listen, there's this cigar box just full of knickknacks that like I'd really like to have, and I know you guys are going to throw it out. And they're like, no, sorry, you don't get any of this. And like they're throwing away your war medals or whatever.
Or you're about to go and like, all right, I got to hook up the next host, and you just like bury a bunch of gold bars, gold press latinum,
I like that.
In a location. No one knows about it. And you just Jadzia is out there with a shovel, like, I'm about to be rich.
Look at this. This USB drive just in this hole in the tree, and wouldn't you know, it's full of bitcoins.
All this crypto. Who knew?
Wow.
I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
I'm with you on the Klingon conversation. I think this episode says a lot about a theme we've talked about, which is the decline of the Klingon Empire, as we looked at it from the perspective of Enterprise, when perhaps it was not yet falling, to as time gone on through TNG. And, we hear a lot of commentary about how their political process has degraded. And you've got these three characters who are literally creatures out of time in a way. They're over 100 years old. They're from the TOS era, who recall a Klingon Empire before its present state. And it explains in part why they act so differently, why they're much more Shakespearean, much more proper despite being warriors, and have just a different vibe than your heavy metal rockers from the dead.
And that's what the answer to my question was, of why did they pick these guys? Because they are such sore thumbs compared to everything that we have seen in terms of Next Gen Ford trying to create a new design language for Klingon and behavior language. And also, a bigger question I had, which is like, there is always a noticeable vibe difference between Klingons when they have black dudes playing them and Klingons when they got white dudes playing them.
True.
And thinking of the TNG era Klingons, it's primarily a talent pool of black actors, right? With the exception, I can tell you off the top of my head, of Gowron and Saul Gochman, right? And I think that says something kind of shitty about Berman era Trek, where it's like, okay, the two juiciest roles that I can think of, and maybe Worf's brother, he was pretty heavily featured in TNG, right?
Correct. And he actually shows up in Deep Space Nine too, by the way.
That was a black dude, right?
Yes.
But the other two like big tentpole characters, and you said the Saul Gochman is a DS9 regular as well, right?
Huge character in General Martok.
So it's like, all right, we're going to say the majority of Klingons are going to be portrayed by black actors, except for here's these two really good ones that are going to be back a lot and probably paid really well. That's going to be our white dudes. Like, you're telling me there were no... I mean, you see what I mean? Like, what's going on here? And then you've got this super heavy episode for Klingons. You got three big speaking roles, and it's three white guys that just stick out wildly, and they look like Klingons by TNG standards.
It's interesting that, like you said, you didn't know that Kor, Kang, and Koloth were the three Klingon captains that Kirk encountered over the course of TOS. Because that's the actual story here, is
sure.
You as a Trek fan at this point are assumed to know who these three people are. They sound like them. They, in many ways, act like them, particularly Kang and Koloth. Korra's changed somewhat so that he's more of a Falstaffian character. I think it's just an excellent parallel for where they put him, although it really works. And it is supposed to be like, oh, over a course of the last 100 years, these guys are still around, right? And they
Mhm.
are different than all of the other Klingons you've encountered, and that's actually the point. To the point where Kang talks about it at length, about how much different he and his, elder compatriots that have managed to survive in their old age, a rarity among Klingons, are from the empire that they used to know. And I think that's what I like about it, which is that they take the fact that they stick out like a sore thumb and make a story out of it. That these are elder Klingons who have survived to become Dahar masters. They are
What's
something that
Dahar
even
exactly?
Odo stands up straight to say, like, I'm sorry I ever suggested a joke about you, right? They never explain what that means, but it has meaning, and they are different.
You got
That's
a
the
lot of
point.
layers of miss overlaps because original series was a hokey, campy. We're
Yeah,
just having fun, and it's being groovy,
overacting. Yeah,
overacting. So you've got the Klingon, this most superficial level, which is the Klingons look different. These guys, I could sit to be like, well, these were the gold lame, bronze skin. Over Voltaire said like they're
Puerto
Puerto
Ricans dressed in gold lame,
yeah, that versus the next
heavy metal
gen
rockers
art
from the dead. Yeah,
sure. You've got the 60s campy overacting versus what should, prior to me knowing that they were actually reused characters with the same actors, um, that there's this difference in behavior. Then you have all the stuff that they've not yet started introducing but will come to feature heavily in Enterprise, which is real views back into the pre Kirk days of what did the Klingons look like, what did they act like, and that's an even more refined product. Here's a legit, these are OG Klingons, and then when Enterprise does it and goes back even further than them, the high morality is there, but a lot of the campy Shakespearean talk is absolutely absent.
yeah. I mean, these are old actors. They're from that era, so they're doing what they do, right? They'll actually, when they very interesting memory alpha for this one, in that they had difficulty finding the guy who played Koloth, William Campbell, because he had stopped working years prior, but they were able to find him because he was doing Star Trek cruises at the time. So they were able to find him and get him to agree to do this.
Get him to beg to do it, you mean?
And all three of them were willing. All three of them actually said that they had a good time doing it, although they were very confused about the makeup. They knew about it because of TNG and Worf, but they're like, but we looked like this. And they had not yet developed what they eventually were going to develop to explain that. So they just told them, like, this Klingons, they just get older and they start looking like this. And they're
Yeah,
like,
but
all
we've
right,
got a
fine.
budget now, and we're going to do it a little bit better. So,
And while William Campbell didn't do any more Star Trek after this, Core, obviously, he survives. He becomes a recurring character on Deep Space Nine. And very interestingly, he becomes a figure by which more of this bridge between what Klingons were and what Klingons are is built. And Deep Space Nine goes deep when Worf joins on that whole topic, right?
good.
And so this
I
is
love
kind of like
Klingons.
an appetizer to a major subplot to the show. And the guy who played Kang, well, Kang passed away here. He plays Kang in that Voyager episode where they flash back to Star Trek 6, like real quick when he's on screen and he's talking to Sulu. And then he actually plays a different character on a future episode of Deep Space Nine. So he had a good enough time that he's like, I'll start working again. This sounds great.
Kang, I think, who's Michael Ansara? Is this
Yeah.
his guy's name? I'd say he was probably my favorite of the three, hands down, because this guy has the most proper vibe to him in terms
Yeah.
of like what the idealized Klingon is actually supposed to act like, and his voice has the gravity to drive that forward.
He's clearly the leader. He's the one with the ship. He's the one with the plan. And he's the one that ultimately has the fateful conversations with Dax that define what ends up happening. He's the one that actually, kills the albino at the end. Spoiler. So he's put at the center, I think, properly. And I liked that the actors, although they had their characters never interacted in TOS ever,
Sure.
uh, figured out their own way of like all three of them have been friends for 100 years in the way that Klingons can be, because they're the legends of their time. They're the Kirk of their time for Klingons. And, they've had all of these adventures we've never seen. We will hear about because Kor will keep showing up and talking about them. And so they've got this camaraderie with each other that's just so deep they can kind of just talk shit to each other and it doesn't matter. Particularly between Kor and Koloth, obviously.
Hmm.
I liked all of that. I thought that was all just very
That's why
clever.
I'm sitting there. I'm like, these guys got to be voice actors. What do I know them from? Kang, this Michael Anaris and Sarah. It's Mr. Freeze from fucking Batman animated
Ah,
series.
he's got a voice. I can see him
He's
doing a lot of
sure
voice
as
acting.
fuck's got a voice, man. That's. I thought the middle guy, the first one
Koloth.
who dies,
Yeah.
he had the Joker vibe. Like there's a Mark Hamill-ish quality to his voice I picked up on a few times, but I don't see
Now,
anything
he was
real.
somebody that was just done working and came back as a one-off to do this. So I don't
Yeah.
know if he's going to have a lot that you're going to be able to find, but the aforementioned Battle of Clachtakel being fought in a hollow suite, and Quark's got probably a pretty common occurrence, which is he rented an hour at someone's overtime, and he's got to call the local PD to get this guy out because he's an angry Klingon and he threatened to kill him if he turned the power off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good introduction to Kor, that he's this sort of late stage, indulgent uh, war legend. I like Kor. I like Kor as the comic relief. I like Kor as this, the guy who tells you all the cool war stories.
And we kind of got a little bit of a taste of this track when we just watched the last Star Trek big movie, the
Star Trek
Final Frontier,
5?
which is
Yeah.
the idea of Klingons who are a big deal and are not living up to their potential and kind of like in this quasi shame of sorts.
They have too much honor in their past to be, just completely discarded, but find themselves in a position where, as we'll hear about, like Kor no longer has the kind of voice in Klingon politics he used to. He's no longer in favor. And so he doesn't have a lot to do except get drunk and hang out with his boys.
Pick up Dabo girls at Deep Sheets 9. Quark's up there. Odo pulls him out, and he comes out, and he's just merry and just wants to go on to the next drinking segment of this bachelor party that doesn't exist. I liked their commentary on violent video games, and like Quark and Odo both are like turning their nose up at the idea of killing people in a holosuite experience. But Quark's ultimately like, it makes fucking money though, man. Whatever.
It's brutal. And it's also popular.
Mm-hmm.
Before the teaser's over, Odo's sitting in his office, like with his pad. And I love this intro. He just like suddenly looks up and Koloth is just there. He goes, "How did you get in?" He says, "I am Koloth." Said, "That doesn't explain how you got in." Yes, it does. Just that's it. How did Koloth get in? Who knows? He's Koloth.
That's another interesting point. If I'm going to take this episode too literal, the Klingon machismo aversion to any sort of deception or subterfuge, the idea of sneaking into the albino's compound under the cover of night and confronting him in his bedroom was unpalatable to these guys, right?
Yes.
It has to be a head-on attack. But then you got stuff like this, where this Koloth guy's a ninja sneaking in like he's Batman. The fact that they're flying around in cloaked vessels, like, so what? You're detest ninjas until it's time to casually be a ninja?
I think there is a very specific desire for them to confront the albino up close and personal, announcing themselves because of the deep dishonor that has been done to them by him.
Sure.
Like, we don't want to kill you in the night because that's the kind of shit you do.
Well, I'll tell you what, this guy's lucky that he didn't get a Duras son, because he would have just gotten fucking nuked from orbit.
So after Koloth leaves Core in the drunk tank, that's kind of when the episode starts to begin.
Odo's up there in ops talking about his zany night of cops. Bajor
Whenever
edition.
Klingons show up, I'm busy.
Yeah. It's very racist behavior. And Jadzia hears and she says, "Oh my God, is it so and so?" And he's like, "Why? As a matter of fact, come with me right now." And she rolls down there and gets to do, every Trill's favorite game of Guess Who. Not gonna believe who I am now.
Hey, what's up?
I
It's
was
your
a
boy
crusty old,
Dax.
I was a crusty old dude last time you saw me, but now I'm a hot 20 something and I'm super fit because I'm sport fucking wrestling coaches.
I liked that of the three, Core is the quickest to be like, Curzon, my old friend. I'm Jadzia now. Jadzia, my old friend. That's it. That's as complicated as it is for him. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that you're a hot chick now. This is an improvement. Come, friend, let's murder people together. Just Core is uncomplicated, right? Like, he is 100% needs no further explanation. Oh, this is how, yeah, this is how trills work. That's fine. It's perfectly fine. By the way, we're all here because, the thing is happening. And once she springs Core from the drunk tank and they find Koloth, that's when Kang shows up to share kind of what the real plot is, which is a figure known as the Albino, who is not a Klingon, by the way,
Right.
has been found. And we get bits and pieces of what that means throughout the episode, which I thought was clever because you don't get it at first. You don't get it when they're all four of them are talking for the first time. You really get the majority of the information after Dax and Kira have their conversation in ops. But it's clear something very serious happened because Jadzia joined with these three Klingons in a blood oath. What is a blood oath? Not really explained, but you don't really need to, right?
No.
Like, something you kind of know, like, okay, you swore an unbreakable vow with these three men that you were going to hunt down this man and kill him.
And
And
eat his heart in the process. That seems to be a big part of the stipulations here.
Jadzia seems pretty locked in from the start that this is something that she needs to do. She has not shown much in the way of hesitation except for the question of morality, which we'll get to in due course. But right from the start, she is very interested in like reuniting with these three to say like, no, I know I'm 20-year-old woman now, but no, I'm in, and it's her
So
having to convince Kang and Koloth of that.
are we led to believe that it's coincidence that these guys are posseing up on Deep Space Nine and just ignorant of the fact that Dax is there?
No, Kang says that he knew Dax was on Deep Space Nine. That's what his information was. He was unaware that Curzon had died and Jadzia had replaced him. When they have their conversation alone when they're walking on the promenade,
Mm-hmm.
and he says like, you don't have to follow this oath. He says like, I was unaware you weren't the same Dax anymore. I just knew Dax was here. So it was not a coincidence. They came for him. They came for Curzon. They found Jadzia.
Okay, well that's the bridge I need to kind of resolve why they're there if they're going to put up so much resistance to her coming out to fill this blood oath.
Yeah, and Kang even says in that conversation that like, I couldn't risk sending a subspace communication because that's how the albino found us the last time. So we just had to show up to find you. We didn't know how we would find you like this.
So the underlying theme here is that these are all warriors at the end of their lives, basically. Nobody's doing anything great. Nobody has any big plans. There's nothing on the schedule that they're looking at here.
No, their careers are over.
This miserable situation that has joined all of them, which I thought was, as far as revenge stories go, this one's pretty fucking solid. So back in the day, the albino, as the racist Klingon government designated him, was doing something naughty and
He's a pirate, basically. Yeah.
sends out 3 pirate with terrible fashion sense. This guy is the most jackbooty, government bootlick themed guy I've ever seen. So he's running spice through the Kessel mines out to the kids in the streets.
He's getting the Klingon kids hooked on the crack rock or whatever's going on.
They go, all right, here's 3 bird of praise or whatever to intercept this thing, and they successfully bring down his empire, but he swears vengeance. And once you know it, each of the 3 captains' firstborn son comes down with some terrible lab-made virus, and they all die of space COVID.
And as a bit of a icing on the cake, Kang's son, whom Curzon Dax was the godfather of, was named after him, was named Dax. And so when the 3 of them decided we're going to swear a blood oath that we're going to find this guy and kill him for killing our children, Dax was honor bound to include himself to do that. This is what Curzon believed, and to the point where this is obviously something that Sisko was aware of as well. In his one kind of scene in this episode, he conveys that he had some level of arguments about this with Curzon, contemporaneous to when Curzon did this. So, it's interesting, the moral relative question. The question of moral relativity here is interesting. So maybe it's a product of its time. Maybe it's because I've changed as a person. Maybe the world has changed. I'm not sure. It's a combination of all of it. I found the argument against Dax joining this as a moral question, which is what Sisko's element of this is, to be very uncompelling, which is to say, this guy deserves to die. Okay? Like, I don't think there's a question this guy deserves to die. And I don't see something particularly morally wrong with Dax going and helping the 3 Klingons who want to go make that happen.
It's a huge fail of the episode on 2 fronts. One, the voice of humanitarian reason of Dax, don't do this, this is wrong, absolutely should have been Julian Bashir.
Yep. Agreed.
Who could have hit all of these notes flawlessly, who has the compulsion to really care about her and her future, and maybe even his own access to her, who is the advocate of life and everything else, right? 2 is having Sisko try to push back, and at no point does Jadzia drop the line of, Ben, if somebody poisoned your son and I had the chance to get vengeance for him after you're dead, would you not want me to avenge Jake's life after someone cowardly fucking murdered him because you did your duty as a Starfleet officer? Shut the fuck up, you know?
Right. Oh, that would have been brilliant.
You have them using Sisko, who's got the strong tie and knows this history with her, which is disposable compared to the fact that Sisko has already shown that he doesn't give a fuck. This is death row Sisko. Maybe season 1 Sisko could have gotten away saying this stuff, but this guy that we've seen season 2, like, come on.
It is the part of the episode that aged poorly to me from when I originally watched it.
That scene specifically. And the third fail point is Kira Nerys. Because as Dax gets kicked out of the table and he's like, no, I'm not going to let you do this. And that really forces Dax to say, all right, this isn't a matter of, do I go kill this guy because of the blood oath that another Trill swore, which technically I'm exempt from, or am I going to actively seek out a murder as a unaffiliated? Like, she's affiliated, but she's not obligated.
Correct.
And now it's not like I am bound by honor, I'm bound by my word to do this. It is I'm going to make a conscious decision to go enter murder. And I think that's a very clever, that's the part of this episode maybe you're not focusing in on enough. Like, it's not, does this guy deserve to die? It's, are you as a neutral third party ready to put blood on Jadzia's hands?
And that's where I thought the Kira conversation really worked, actually. was because that is the part that held up to me. The conversation with Cisco doesn't, because Cisco becomes such a morally great character in his own right that it kind of feels a little retrospectively wrong for him to be arguing that someone shouldn't go and commit a very justifiable murder of vengeance. It's for her conversation with Kira, to me, is maybe the best reason to watch this episode, because first it finally touches on Kira's lingering guilt for the many murders that she committed and what that means to her, and her willingness to talk about that. And second, where Jadzia actually resolves, like, I really actually feel an obligation to go kill this guy. Like, I feel it. I want to go do this. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because I remember that kid. I remember how innocent he was. And I remember him dying horrifically. And it's this fucking guy's fault, and I want to go kill him for it.
The fail point on the Kira Nerys conversation is that that she's as hesitant to it as she is, and by the end isn't like big thumbs up. And maybe that's a complexity to the Kira character of like, I like that she's not proud of what she's done, and she's got a lot of guilt, right?
Yeah.
But we've seen as she has moved forward, like, I forget what episode it was. I think she was talking to Kai Opaka.
Yeah, it was on the planet Mike Ementrout when she had a real crisis of faith over all of the blood that she spilled.
I'm afraid I can't get into heaven because the prophets aren't going to like what I did. Right?
Right.
Like, there is real regret on her. And that's the same Kira Nerys that we're seeing here, which is like, dude, that shit was fucked up. I did what I had to. I wish that I didn't. And I have nightmares and it haunts me. And I absolutely do not want you as a friend having this come in. And the image that I have to portray to the guys is not the same image that I have to portray to you. And we can be girls, and I can be soft and vulnerable around you. And I'm telling you right now, you don't want any part of this, right? And granted, maybe had Jadzia like really gone into detail of like, oh yeah, these kids shit blood until they died. And also this guy was like, schlepping around. Like, this guy's a real piece of shit. This albino guy, he's no good.
I liked Kira's position here. I think it worked. I think that she's consistently discomforted by her history as a killer. While it does paint so much of her personality and her reactions to things, it's more subconscious than conscious. When her conscience kicks in, she actually fits in more with her Starfleet comrades, in the sense that she doesn't like that she did what she did, and that she has attempted to convey to Jadzia, like, you don't want to go down the road where you were willing to go and spill extrajudicial blood because you think it's the right thing to do. Because no matter how much of the right thing to do you think it is, it's going to stick with you forever. Because she, as we will find out in future episodes, does not regret doing what she had to do to ensure the safety and future of her people. She just regrets the moral the personal moral stain that it put on her. And she's conveying the same thing here, which is you're going to leave a piece of yourself behind to do this.
Well, then you got to contrast that with everything else you've seen out of Kira Nerys, which is this very real sense of binary justice, this complete lack of fucks as to what blood gets spilled, and an eagerness at times to even discard the rules and push forward on murder agendas, which I'm going back in, like, was it Necessary Evil? This thing keeps coming up, like the willingness that she had even now to pass along names to die, to kill and see blood spilled. Like, again, maybe Jadzia could have sold this situation a little bit better and triggered ultimate justice Kira. But at the light superficial glazing she gives this, she gets the, no, honey, don't. This is a black mark you can't take off your soul. Did I mention the albino's cardiac? Fucking kill him! Kill him! Rip the bitch apart! Get in this photon torpedo. I'll shoot you towards that planet so you can get there even faster for murder.
I do want to contrast this for the moment with Reunion from TNG, because that episode ends with an excellent sequence, one of the best in Star Trek, in my opinion, which is despite the fact that Worf has been disaccommodated and is therefore a non-person within the Klingon Empire, we know through implication that the Klingons still retain, even a Klingon such as Worf in that circumstance retains the right to challenge someone to a fight to the death if they kill their mate, right? So despite he is essentially a non-person, he is able to beam over to Duras' ship and say, yeah, Duras killed my woman, therefore we're gonna have a fight now. And everyone's like, yeah, I guess that's the rules. And that's it, right? Like, to Picard's great anguish at the end, him killing Duras in that fight is perfectly fine by the Klingon Empire. They have no problems. This situation is closed. And now Gowron's the Chancellor. That's it. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
And he hates that. He reprimands Worf. It's a mark against him in Picard's estimation. And in this circumstance, you've got Jadzia, who's very much kind of following the same path, which is the Klingons believe this is totally legit. It's really just a matter of how it fits into the Federation ideal. And Sisko's argument falls apart, in my opinion, in the way that Picard's does not, because Picard's objection was, you're in a Starfleet uniform, you beamed your ass over there, you murdered somebody in the middle of a mission. I don't care that everybody thinks this is okay. It's not okay. And he takes a very firm line of like, I expect more out of you.
Also, we're on the fucking flagship. We are not explicitly a gas station on the edge of known space.
And DS9, in a way, is stating here, like, by having this parallel of some relatively similar beats, is to say, this is a circumstance where Jadzia is actually going to go with these Klingons, is actually going to participate in killing these motherfuckers, and she's going to come back, and no one's actually going to say anything about it. There is no reprimand at the end of this from Sisko. There's nothing from Kira. She goes to her station. They kind of look at her like a little like, I can't believe you did that. But at the same time, no consequences, no dress down. And I think it's DS9 saying, like, we're going to be a little more realist around here, right? Like, we're going to just kind of leave this question here as to say, what Dax do really that negative? And I think the story says it wasn't, right? Whereas Reunion's saying, like, Worf crossed the line. I don't think Blood Oath is saying that Dax did.
Well, who's going to say it? Sisko? So Dax can say, hey, remember when those guys in the velvet red thigh-high boots showed up and you let O'Brien go on a murder spree and did nothing? Or one of the other times that the other time where Kira and O'Brien flew to a illegal prison site and murdered a bunch of Cardassian guards.
And you let that happen? In fact, you sent O'Brien with her? You know? Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you can puff your shirt up here, buddy, but unlike Picard, who, again, is the idealized human, right? He is the best of the best. He's the flagship guy. Like, this is the guy that can't falter on his principles. And this is the guy that's got to fucking go down with the ship. Sisko's already established himself as dirty, so yeah, no big deal. Like, I'm not thrilled you did this, but I guess the bigger part of the Sisko story isn't that he gave pushback, because that's to be expected. It's that there wasn't the knowing wink, job well done look at the end, which is what I would have expected. Again, him being a father.
I think that the episode would have been improved. Again, this is an interesting one for me to review because I loved this thing when I saw it when I was 19. And now I'm 45, not 45, I'm 41. And I'm looking at it through different lens. That Sisko as a character changes so dramatically from this perspective, and it seems retroactively inconsistent with his character that he would be against this. And then B, I mean, we don't see the albino on screen for very long, but for as long as he's on screen, man, this guy sucks. He deserves to be fucking killed.
The worst.
He is the worst guy. And I think the show is making that point, which is like, this guy actually did deserve what he got. He probably deserved worse than what he got. And so we're punishing Kira for, rather punishing Dax for being involved with that doesn't seem like that would work, you know? like the
Mhm.
way they portrayed him.
They fly out. They're having their little uh, rolling party meeting where they're like, here's the information we have. What are we going to do? We're about 45 minutes away. Maybe we should talk about the plan.
Yeah. We just sent out the summons, right? They're coming to the hotel room.
And
How
they're
are we
like,
doing this?
we're going to kick in the doors. Here's our information on the guards. Real sketchy on how all this information came out. Is it legit information? Is it a trap? It smells like a trap. Fuck it. We're going to get in there. We're going to kick the door down. We're going to tear everybody up. We're going to be swinging swords. They're going to have guns. It's 40 of their best people. We will later find out that majority of this information is coming from the albino directly as part of his challenge. And we get to the real thrust of all of this, which, as we said before, these guys are all ready to die, and they are going here to effectively find a good death. They'd really like to kill the guy who killed their sons, but especially Kang.
Yeah,
Corn?
Kang's tired. Like Kang is the one that is the linchpin to the resistance to Dax joining. And at first, you don't have context as to why, because he seems to be very accepting of Jadzia's desire to fulfill Curzon's oath. Koloth comes around after they have a duel in the hell caves that are the holosuite where he's practicing with a batleth. Very comical cut back and forth from the stunt doubles with that.
Oh my god,
it was really funny. But Kang's resistant, and you find out in this scene the reason he was resistant is that he set this up so that the three of them can die and gloriously in battle and go to Sto-Vo-Kor and wrap up their lives, which is very Klingon. Whereas he knew he didn't want to include Jadzia. He didn't want to bring Jadzia along on a suicide mission. So he was actually looking out for her, and she insisted. And that's why he's like, all right, fine, come with us and be damned, right? Like, if you insist, I'm not going to stop you. And this is where Jadzia is figuring out, like, this is why you didn't want to bring me. And Dax, for her part, is like, I accept I might die here, but I would like a shot at living, and second, I'd like a shot at succeeding. I want to kill this guy. And your mission, your plot here is not actually that you'll kill him. You're just going to get killed. So why don't we take a second look at this plan and come up with a way of perhaps we can kill this guy and maybe even live. Have we thought about that? And maybe not the living part is what Kang responds to, but he does respond to the maybe we should do this in a way that allows us to succeed. And I think that all works from a perspective of thinking about Klingons and their obsession with honor and especially of dying in battle that directly relates to their beliefs about the afterlife, which according to the Voyager are all true. So
clearly, yeah.
So that they're all gung ho about it, and then Jadzia comes in with the actually, why don't we do some Starfleet science and make it so that we've got a real shot at this? maybe it could be murder with success rather than just a bloodbath until you're all dead.
By the way, let me casually drop that we can orbitally bombard an area and completely disable all direct energy weapons. Which, let me tell you, if I ever see another hostage situation where someone's held at phaser point,
is this going to be like a post-mortem revival technique / security cameras only when they're convenient moment for you?
This might be one of those wait, this is a thing? Why are we not doing the thing here?
Is this weakest shit territory, or is this not quite?
Man, we're getting to the end of the season, and off the top of my head, I'm hard pressed to come up with what my weakest shit contender is going to be for this season. I'm gonna have to.
I think there are some endings to some of these episodes, like the playing God. I'm just gonna beam this proto universe back to where I found it in the Gamma Quadrant, and not really explain the last 5 minutes of this episode. That there's nothing that's going to be the big weakest shit, at least that we've seen so far. We'll see, but in any case, they come up with a new plan, which involves them shutting off all the directed energy weapons using the bird of prey, and Jadzia is going to sabotage the armory to create a distraction, and then the Klingons are going to blow up the generator and shut down all the power, and then they're going to stage their assault on the residents so that they can finally kill the albino.
this whole thing, having old guys running around in heavy makeup, not the best look. As far as bad Starfleet gunfights go, put this right up there with Enterprise. I
Yeah.
get what they're doing. They needed to do it. None of this was really good action.
No,
And
not at all.
the fucking guys that they're going against are, I don't know if, I'm sure all of you out there listening are old enough to remember laser tag, the bad laser tag helmets. These guys, which interestingly, everyone is a human, right?
Yeah.
All the bad
Except
guys
they
are
had
human.
the lieutenant, and the albino.
And just, it's such a fucking boring action sequence. Like, this is where I start having my fun. And it's like, all right, this guy's a piece of shit. He's a space pirate. He has what very clearly looks like the evil jackbooty government thug team. It's not like Star Wars, the bounty hunter showing up to go after Lando pirate types. These are guys wearing laser tag helmets, all clean shaven in their spandex American Gladiator uniforms.
It
Like,
is very, very early TNG vibe. Absolutely.
what are these guys doing that these humans are working for this clear piece of shit? Like, you, again, you could be living a good life of replicators and holodecks, and you're holed up on this outpost with this child slaver. What life decisions have you made? What failed colony? Like, that's always my assumption is that, these are guys off of Tasha Yar's failed colony. And
Oh,
they're
yeah,
just,
yeah. The roaming rape gangs. They
yeah.
got retconned. Yeah.
Very poor very poor Terran behavior out of these guys, but they bombard it. Their guns can't work, which, again, is that honorable? To have a guy who thinks they've got a gun and you've disabled the gun like you're Batman throwing a fucking magnetic clip to the side of the gun. And now you've got this big ass sword and they've got nothing. Although those guns get hit with swords a lot and the guns do not break. But I will point out the batleth, when it hits the wall, the batleth does break. So we're going to have a talk about batleths a little later.
I mean, the batleth was a mistake. And they kind of admit that because when Worf shows up again to the show, he never uses one. He's a mechlith guy, which is just a much more practical looking weapon at that stage. Like the batleth is just two 80s, right? It's two American Gladiators, frankly. It just doesn't work as a weapon, and they come to that realization after they want to, improve their action sequences as the show goes on.
So they take away everybody's weapon, and then they just start basically slaughtering unarmed guards until those unarmed guards get bayonets from somewhere, which, that's a real choice, to be living in the future of transporters, warp drives, laser beams, and you're still fucking packing a bayonet like you're some Napoleonic
trench in World War One.
Yeah.
Make sure you're ready.
They're cutting through everybody, whatever. And the super predictable ending of, all your hero characters who are Klingons, which can are Terminators, basically, right? And it's everybody dies to one stab apiece.
I did like a couple things. First, that Koloth, he gets mortally wounded. Kor does not. Kor gets just basically a flesh wound. And when Kor goes over to comfort Koloth, Koloth is defiant, I'm not going to die before you. And then Kor cuts through the shit to kind of ease his ability to pass, to say I'll make sure your legend lives on. Let's put the bullshit aside for a second. I know you're about to die. I need to make sure the memory of your greatness will live on, and I will be the person that will sing the songs. I thought it was just a great here's Kor being serious for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
His friend's about to die. I'm going to say the thing I know you need to say. And then Koloth's okay, good, thanks. Dead. And then, of course, with Kang, he's the one who duels the albino at the end. He gets stabbed, creates an opening for Jadzia. There's a great monologue on the part of the albino. I don't think you've got it in me to kill me. It's just not, you're not going to tear my heart out and eat it. I can see it in your eyes. Let's cut the shit, right? You're not it. Fortunately, Kang's got a little left in him, so he solves the problem with a little stab to the back. And it neatly ties up is Jadzia going to commit murder? No. She can't bring herself to do it. Or maybe she would have. Who knows? But Kang steps in, as he was demonstrated he was going to throughout the episode, trying to preserve Jadzia, as you know, dignity from this circumstance, and says, "Oh, thank you for leaving the death blow for me. I really appreciate it, Dex. It was a great gesture on your part." I liked how that all worked out. Like Kang knows, like you weren't a killer, Jadzia, but I'm going to alleviate your conscience that you did what you were supposed to do here, and I appreciate it.
I don't know. I think she should have killed him.
I like that she didn't get a chance to choose. That she doesn't know if she would have or not.
Listen, man. When a guy walks forward and puts his head into the can opener section of your Swiss Army batleth, and all you got to do is like move half an inch and he's going to be in neck puncture city, you've got your opening there. So that's very clearly the showrunners being like, we're not going to paint her as a murderer, and we're not going to put this moral conundrum on her, and just really give her the cleanest moral quandary possible, where ultimately all stakes are handled without her agency. And I guess maybe you can look and say she didn't have what it took to kill him because she didn't kill him when she clearly had the chance. Maybe she would have let him go or whatever. But I thought that would have been a real rock star moment for her to be like, I'm full of surprises. I am not your standard Starfleet officer. I don't care about my career. I've been willing to throw my entire life and Jadzia's entire life away before going down with the ship on that murder trial, right? Like, absolutely,
Right.
she should have fucking killed this guy. This is someone whose conviction to these things far eclipses anybody else's morality in terms of what Starfleet wants you to do and what you feel like doing. So she should have beheaded this guy. And I think that the Klingon stabbing him in the back while he's laying there dying looked weak as fuck, dishonorable, and it wasn't a great look for anybody. I mean, at the end of the day, the albino's dead, and I think that's the important part because that guy sucks. But let Jadzia get some real dirt under her nails.
I agree with you now, I think, as you've laid out the case, that this episode would have been vastly improved if Jadzia had actually killed him. Like, that there wasn't a chance for Kang to do it. It was up to her or it wouldn't happen. And she follows through and actually says, like, I did this because you killed my godson. You deserve this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's got nothing to do with a blood oath. It's got nothing to do with, Curzon's promise. It's, you deserve to die and I'm going to kill you.
And I fought to come here to do this.
Right.
And let's talk about character agency in these, because Jadzia has been one of the biggest culprits from all the Star Trek that we've watched in terms of you're pretty and we're going to put you on screen, but you're here as a decoration and you are not here as a real agent of change. Your agency over your own destiny is ultimately limited. And many times now it's you caught in a pickle and the man has to come along and make the decision for you, or you need to be saved. Sisko had to save you at your trial. Bashir had to save you, and Sisko had to save you when they stole your trill. Kang has to save you from making the decision of whether or not you're going to kill this piece of shit. Like, when does she start to really have meaningful... She needs to have Kira Nerys in the scene for her to be able to actually seal the deal on anything.
It's a good observation that she continues to not have to commit to an action when her life has been put in jeopardy. I'll be interested to see your reaction as time goes on and everyone's character gets a lot more focused, a lot more of these edges start to get sanded down to something with a little bit more definition. But that's a very interesting point. Then the 3 backstory episodes, out of the 4 backstory episodes of Dax, 3 of them involve her getting bailed out of making difficult decisions regarding her own agency by a male character. And only in playing God is she in the position where she's making the decisions about what's going on. But it really is less about her and about somebody else.
And even then, there's still like she's not the one who saves the day because it's the other kid's fancy flying that like gets him through it and gives him the.
It's her plan. Like she's the one
Sure,
who
yeah.
trusts him to do it. Like
It's the
she's doing
best
her
look of the
job.
four.
Yeah, but that's an interesting observation. I like that. So I think our conversation has revealed to me that Blood Oath may be something that is a favorite of people who love Star Trek, uh, in the deep sense. Like if you're a if you watch TOS, which I had, that's the Star Trek I got into watching with my dad.
Completely
This
different
this
animal.
yeah, this shit hits hard because you see these three and you're like, I love this. I love that they're back. I love that they're the same dudes they were before to a degree and that they've changed and they're hamming it up. Like, and Dax like fits into this in a way that really works. And if you're somebody like yourself who doesn't know any of that, suddenly the episode's weaknesses become more apparent because you don't have that layer of nostalgia that is preventing you from seeing it. So very interesting conversation we've had about this. It's probably the first time I said like this is a really good episode where you're like no, and I kind of see your point. I kind of come around to your perspective.
If I had that novelty crutch to lean on, I think I would have been there. But just coming in as a standalone product, like there's a lot of cool shit here. And again, I do like looking at the good old days of the Klingon Empire versus the current shit show. It was jarring to see their rendition because we had been there in Enterprise and seeing their rendition of the good old days being Shakespearean flourish to the way they talk. But not a bad episode by any stretch of the matter. Like I didn't hate this thing. I wasn't looking at my watch. It's just like there's a lot of stuff in here to make you go,
I completely understand. Although I am a little bit more confident you're going to find the next week's episode much more interesting. Why don't you tell us what that's going to be?
The Maquis part, or Maquis, is that how you say this? The Maquis. I'm not familiar with these guys. When a Cardassian fighter or freighter explodes at Deep Space Nine, which is really what things come there to do, right? It's to dock and blow.
They come to be blown up. Yeah, that's true.
Cardassians blame Federation colonists in the new demilitarized zone. This is interesting. We got teleplay by James Crocker, but the story, you got everyone on deck. This is tell me where we know these three names from: Rick Berman, Michael Piller, and Jerry Taylor.
Yeah, buddy.
This is called, hey, hear me out. We're thinking about this thing called Voyager.
There's a lot of building. This is the beginning of the Maquis plot of all of Berman Era Trek. So we have, in a lot of ways, already experienced a lot of the story, which is interesting for us to have, where we've watched all of Voyager and dealt with all of the Maquis elements from that. So we've even watched some of the TNG stuff as it relates to the Maquis. Because I think one of the episodes we watched as Hasbro homework was the penultimate episode of TNG, which has to do with the reason why Rolaren isn't Kira Nerys. So this is where it all starts. And I would say Deep Space Nine has far more interesting things going on with it with the Maquis throughout its run.
I would say that
Voyager
Deep Space
ever
Nine
does.
has far more interesting than Voyager ever does.
Yeah, period. Not again, a surprise.
I want to look at this thing we just watched here that I'm kind of like poo-pooing on. This would have been one of the greatest Voyager episodes ever, I think.
Yeah, would have. This is like what for you, maybe a B-, and you're like, still, this would have just crushed basically everything that Voyager ever made, aside from like the true
episode
hits
of season 2 of Enterprise that there was.
That's not a high bar to clear. But yes, Maquis Part 1 will be with us next week. We hope you'll be with us as well. We'll see you then.